Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. This episode is brought to you by L1 Automotive Training and Keith Perkins. If you're looking for education on module programming, J2534, EEPROM work, key and immobilizer, electrical diagnostics, or drivability diagnostics, Keith has a website, l1training.com, that's got over 60 hours of training videos on all those subjects and more. When I first started out doing mobile, I utilized Keith's videos on module programming in J2534 in order to get my head wrapped around what I would need for the tooling, the computers, the software setups, what kind of obstacles I would be up against when I'm out there programming modules on cars. And it was a huge benefit to me. And I continue to use the training videos that he has on his website. So I strongly recommend checking out l1training.com. The link is in the show notes. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping. I'll be your host once again for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Just me on the show this week, and I'm going to update everybody on Ford programming software and the challenges that many of us have been facing over the last month or so. If you don't do a ton of Ford programming, this might be new to you. Maybe you've already gone through the challenges and hopefully come out on the other side with functional software. Or maybe you do it infrequently and you haven't touched base with where they're at recently. There are definitely some things that you want to know. I guess otherwise, maybe you're just considering getting into Ford programming. And again, they do have some updates with how they've managed the subscription, what you have to do, and the cost. So I should probably premise what we use primarily is we've done the yearly subscription for IDS and FDRS. Now, this is still true today, but both of those softwares come together under one subscription. So it used to be there was a yearly script. It was somewhere between $900 and $1,000. After it was all said and done, and you get access to both of those softwares. It used a 20-digit license key, at least for logging into IDS. You would still do an actual login with FDRS. And just to clarify, IDS is integrated diagnostic software. FDRS is Ford Diagnostic and Repair System. So FDRS is for newer vehicles, roughly 2018 and up, although they didn't transfer all of them. There's a chart on Ford's website that tells you. We'll talk about that. But you get both the softwares for the same subscription. You could do all the diagnostics. You could do all the programming that you want within that year. There's no, specific VIN limitation or, there's no limitation per the amount of cars that you do in that time. You could do one or you could do 5,000 as long as you paid that yearly script. It didn't matter to Ford, which is actually still true. They haven't changed that aspect of it. But in case you don't program with Fords, that's the setup. And again, this would cost you roughly $900 to $1,000 a year. You get a 20-digit license key that you would put onto a laptop, and then that laptop was the one that you were going to use. Now, you could return that license and put it on another one, but you're only using one laptop at a time for that. And that was the method they used, as long as I've been programming with it. Now, there was also FJDS, which is Ford J2534 diagnostic software, and that would work with a JBox. So the difference between the two is if you're going to use IDS, you needed the VCM 2 or 3, or I guess even a 1, but that's the Ford programming interface, the red box that allows you to connect to the vehicle, the VCI, where FJDS, the J2534 version, you could use any JBox that meets the requirements for what they have, which is most of them. and you were limited on the modules that you could do through FJDS, but you could do a short-term subscription to that and get most stuff done. You could run some security functions. You could do PMIs on powertrain, engine control, transmission control, that sort of thing. And a few other ones were included in that. But you could do a short-term sub. And to be honest, it's been so long since I did a short-term sub. I want to say it was like $50, $80, something like that, where you could get it for, I guess, more of a reasonable price. And that's one of the bigger changes to what they have on their subscription side of things. So what they've changed to is there is one subscription now that'll get you access to any of these softwares, whether it be FJDS or the combo of IDS and FDRS. But the shortest subscription that you can do now is a 2-day, which is $120. You can do a month for $300, or you can do a year for $1,200, which is probably the method that will go, is just buying the year. And of course, the cost's gone up $300, but everything else has too. So that part of it's not the end of the world. But for people doing short-term subs just to get a solenoid strategy done or a powertrain control module programmed, that price has gone up for a single module significantly, because a lot of shops, and some that we service, like we've been getting calls on Fords quite a bit more recently, because even though the shops had the capability of doing it with a J-Box, they would just buy the short-term sub. Now that it's $120, it actually is more cost-effective to have us come do it for our price point. So that is something to consider if you were doing the short-term subscriptions for particular modules. Of course, you got to look at to see what the volume of programming is in your shop, what the capabilities are. If you want to purchase that month and say, okay, well, we get at least 4 or 5 of them within a month, then that monthly makes sense. Or does the yearly make sense at that point? Because if you're doing enough, even though it's $1,200, you can make that money back. Plus, you get all the diagnostics if you have the full IDS FDRS capabilities. So again, that depends on what interface that you're using as well. But with their update, it wasn't just that we were going to jump the price. They've also switched to a login method that even with IDS, you're putting your Ford username and password in each time. And this is where there was a lot of trouble. Now, they've had a variety of issues with just the software itself and connecting to the server to get the programming data and the as-built data. That's been an issue. I think they've cleared that up with the newest version, which is 132.04. So if you're running an older version than that, it might tell you like, hey, you can't run this software anymore. But there seem to be issues with accessing or connecting to the Ford server to get the programming data that you needed in order to program. Some of them, IDS just wouldn't start up. Some of them, it would give you login errors. But again, with the 132.04, they seem to have cleared up most of that. Where the other issue was, and this was an issue that we had as well, and so for anybody who's just hasn't been using their Ford software for a while, would want to be aware of this. If you had purchased a license any point within the last 12 months, going back to like October 1st, and you purchased a yearly license, okay, so you spent that $900, you got IDS, FDRS for a year, and that license key, that 20-digit license key is good. They will honor that 12 months. So let me give you an example. Let's say you bought it in August, right? It would be good until August 26, but it is a 20-digit license key, which the newest version, the 132.04, does not use that. You have no place to put that number in order to get into IDS and activate that. So what do you do? How do you use the time that you have on that license key? Because again, Ford will honor that. What you're going to have to do is get a hold of Ford, and I'll give you some information on how to do that. And they have to manually transfer that purchase to this new account version that they're using, or this subscription model that they're using. So how you're going to do this is just about everything you're going to need is accessed through motorcraftservice.com. And if you've done stuff with Ford, you probably are familiar with the website and you most likely have an account there. I think you have to have an account there in order to log into FDRS, but motorcraftservice.com, and you're going to log in, although you can access a lot of the stuff through the site without logging in. But in order to check your subscription and stuff like that, you'll need to be logged in. So where you want to go, if you're looking for any details on stuff on this website, is the very top page. Once you're in, you'll see diagnostic tool support, and you'll see the software where you can break down the different versions, IDS, FJDS, FDRS. You can see what vehicles they apply to, what you're able to do with FJDS versus the others. There's coverage list for FJDS. This show is brought to you by Auto Rescue Tools and Isaac Rodell. If you've been looking for a programming laptop, but you're not sure which one to buy or how to set it up, especially if you want to program multiple brands. You know, you've got some domestic vehicles, you've got European vehicles. Can the same software go on the same laptop? What size hard drive do I need? All those questions. Isaac's your guy. He can custom set up programming laptops that are ready to tackle any make or model. I've got one of these laptops myself, and I can say that it is outstanding, and it really streamlines the process by having everything you need in one device. So if you're looking for something like that, I highly recommend checking out autorescuetools.com. You'll also find scan tools, diagnostic equipment, key cutting equipment, and much more. Check out the link in the show notes. I highly recommend it. And if you go to the tab that says Ford Diagnostic Subscription, that's not only where you're going to purchase whatever length subscription that you want, but right now there are a bunch of helpful tabs there if you're having issues. So again, let's say you already made your purchase in August and you're like, well, I don't want to spend another $1,200. You don't have to right now. You will at next August. You're going to have to move to this new version, but you could still use your existing one if it has time on it. And this is where you're going to have some helpful links here. So there's a job aid for purchasing the diagnostic subscription. There's some communication resources of like how you can reach out to people at Ford that will be able to help you. And then there's one, then this is the one that we had to follow in order to get ours working, because what happened was we had our old version that we had purchased, but then we couldn't access it through the new software. So we were basically locked out of our Ford software for about a week here, trying to figure this out. So there's a tab that says customers having issues finding their existing subscriptions. So you just click on that and it opens up a PDF, which has a ton of useful information on how to get this set up. And it has some contact for you to get a hold of people that can help transfer your license over. There is another the one that says aftermarket subscription communication. That's going to have a whole lot of useful information as well, along with a procedure. It's under note 2 of that document that has you do a uninstall, a reboot of the PC, running what's called the IDS cleanup utility. And for a period of time, it actually had this IDS cleanup utility that you could download right from the Ford website. But right now, as of 11/30/2025, I actually don't see the link. But if you Google IDS cleanup utility, you can find it there and download it. A lot of you have already had it. But this procedure has you run this cleanup utility before you continue on with the installation process. And this is basically wiping stuff from the old version of IDS before it loads up the new one. And this process is part of getting rid of some of the errors that people were encountering. So take a look at these documents and read through them, look at the processes, and then you can also find the contact information if you need assistance, or like I say, you need the license transferred. And that was one thing we weren't able to do on our own, is we had to reach out to somebody at Ford. They had to get it transferred over. Even then, we did have some issues, again, with the newest version. It seems to be sorted out. It seems to be working okay. So that's all stuff that we've been dealing with on the Ford software side of things. Now, in addition to that, over the last few months, if you do any Ford security, anti-theft, key work, parameter resets that are involved with replacing control modules, and you used aftermarket tooling, particularly the Autel IM series, they recently have taken away a lot of the key and immobilizer functionality out of the software for Ford. It's not 100% gone, but it's dramatically reduced from what it used to be on Fords. Autel used to be a great tool, even for newer Fords, for adding keys, performing parameter resets on ones that would normally require a NASTIF login. That's been taken away. Autel's trying to appease the manufacturers by not putting stolen immobilizer software on their tools. And so we're losing those functions out in the field if you've been relying on them. Now, the Ford software does have these functions built in. However, if it's a NASTIF vehicle, then you're going to have to get the owner authorization. Obviously, you need to be a VSP with current NASTIF credentials to be able to log in for these functions. But it does add a step if you were used to using the Autel to do some of these functions, and now you need the Ford version. Again, it works, but you're going to have to do that extra step of, making sure that you get the customer information on every car. Now, it's still good practice to do so anyways, but for like parameter resets on powertrain control modules, we weren't always doing that because they're just replacing a control module. But now, if it requires a security function, we need to get that information so that we can file the D1 with NASTIF. So that might be an obstacle for you as well. Now, there are other tools out there that will work with Ford immobilizer systems. I have a couple. They've been okay with keys. The parameter reset one, we've just been relying on Ford software now, and we're just doing the process of like, hey, if you can't get us owner authorization, then I don't know what to tell you. If you have to figure it out some other way, we're not screwing around trying to go out of our way to not get the information. It doesn't make sense as a business. Like, it covers us to have that information anyways, that we've got the authorization to do these. So we're doing it that way. We've got the process down to file the D1s pretty smoothly now. And it's working out just fine that way. Plus the doing the parameter resets on the newer Fords, it's faster that way. Because Autel would make you wait 10, 15 minutes to do it, even on the newer ones, where these ones, it's just a login and you're done, and then that's it. We did have an interesting issue on a Fusion recently where we were doing a BCM, and it was a reman part they bought off of eBay, but it somehow triggered two different VIN numbers to pop up in the VSP transactions of the SDRM website. And I'd never seen that before. And the people at NASTIF were also confused by it. And so I had to get the log from IDS to say, hey, look at, this is the timestamp of when, your VSP transactions were generated and the car I was working on. And we looked at the IDS log. Okay, here's where I did, because it made me do multiple logins on this car. And I'm pretty certain one of these triggered a second VIN, even though the log for IDS didn't show a second VIN number. I'm guessing the module must have had it in there. It was a very interesting scenario, and we just called NASTIF and emailed back and forth with them, and it was handled, but there was a few extra steps that we had to do. Anyways, Just something else to be aware of. Again, if you haven't been doing a ton of Fords lately, there are some new obstacles or things to be aware of as you go into the programming. Last note that I'll have is ForeScan. I've mentioned that before. That's definitely a useful tool. It's really helped us out, both with Ford and Mazda vehicles in certain situations. There's some things where it's more user friendly, some things where you're able to do some custom things, which are very helpful. It's not an end all be all. There are some restrictions now with purchasing the license due to the geographical location and the sanctions on Russia. If you do some digging out there, you can figure out how to get a license still. It's still possible. That's a useful backup, in my opinion, but it won't do everything. There's limitations and there's things that you're going to need the Ford factory software for, but I do always like having a backup. So again, if you're doing a ton of Fords, it's worthwhile seeking out getting ForeScan capability as well, in addition to that factory software. So that's where I'm going to wrap it up today. Nice, short, and sweet. If you got anything else to add to Ford programming or something that you've run across, don't hesitate to reach out or post it up in the Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. But other than that, let's all get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.